Hey everyone, today we're doing a mid lane secondary guide, a little something different. I've got Coach Curtis with me here today. He is graciously returning the favor. I did offer support on his channel. So yeah, I'm really excited to jump into this video. I think how we're going to start is to, introduce Coach Curtis, the man, the myth, the legend himself. If you don't know him, you should check him out. He's got fantastic mid educational content on YouTube. And yeah, do you just want to give a really brief introduction of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Coach Curtis. I now coach only mid lane. You've probably seen me somewhere on YouTube under the YouTube channel Coach Curtis. I run a I do basically mid lane coaching now full time through my platform Midlane Academy. Yeah, that's basically it at the moment. Just coaching mid.
Yep. And we crossed paths in 2018. We were on the same team in Divals. You were coach, I was support, and we had pretty successful in a roller coaster year. So that's how we're kind of acquainted. Okay, so mid lane secondary. Why should supports consider mid lane secondary as their off role? And I would love to get your perspective on this as well, because as a mid laner yourself, you look to do support off role, and then from a support's perspective, like bot lane, so ADC, you share the lane, but it's a very different playstyle. The champs that you're playing, if you're trying to play ADC, a lot more mechanically intensive. The fights, the way you approach fights, very, very different. Jungle, completely different game. I wouldn't really suggest that for many off roles. And then top lane, once again, like just the flow of the game, the pace. It's a very isolated lane. You're playing like bruises, and it's just quite different from support as well. So yeah, what are your thoughts on, or maybe why you want to play, support secondary as a mid laner?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I've actually never thought of it in terms of the other way around, why a support would want to play mid. But I think one of the big things would be, as a support, you are first and foremost a facilitator, right? Like no matter basically what you play, you're a facilitator in some capacity, whether it's through you're the classic engager like the Leona, Nautilus, etc., or you're an enchanter or whatever it might be, or even you're a playmaker, right? You're still facilitating in a weird way. Like, say if you're a roaming pike, you're not there to carry the game yourself. You're getting other people ahead, right? So I think that mid is one of those roles where it's such a mixed bag with how you can go about the game. Like you can play that quote-unquote hard carry 1v9 style and play the Cassiopeia and do that. But you can also play the facilitator mids. There's a lot of people in my Midlane Academy program that play, they love playing more facilitators, and they like playing the Galio mids. They like just playing Swain and creating space in team fights. They like playing, there's a whole host of different ways to play mid lane. So I think that as a support player, like there are many options. You can go down the Leona route, the Enchanter route, the Pike route, whatever you want to go. Same thing applies for mid. So I think it gives you a lot of flexibility, and you are forced to think about the map a lot, which I think support also as well. Like you do need to think about the map a lot. So I think there are probably some overlaps. The one thing I will say about this is that I totally agree where like AD carry is a very different, even though you have this familiarity with the lane, it's a different style, right? It's a very different mindset. Definitely. Like your mindset is completely different. Top lane, you could argue that top lane has that facilitative style, but the thing is, top is a very hard role. Like in my opinion, I think it's like one of the hardest roles in the game. And I think that like you being left on an island a lot of the time in this top lane is quite challenging, especially if you want to play the map. It's harder to play the map. So yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest reasons.
Yeah, and you actually share champ pools as well to an extent. Like you can play a Karma, you can play a Seraphine mid.
Yeah.
And what I've sometimes experimented with when I played ADC off-roll is that I would just play like an Enchanter, like a double Enchanter bot. But then that can like really skew and mess up some drafts in terms of just like damage spread and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, personally, what I've experimented in mid is playing like Zillion, because I know how to play him support. Karma, just a little bit of Seraphine. And so like the way that you can embrace the facilitating role in both support and mid
for sure.
Really cool. And here's another thing that I wanted to mention. So if you're playing support, I think it's fair to say that you will get your role quite often, especially if you're compared to queuing mid. So it's in a backwards way, it's almost more important, or at least it's really important to make sure that we know how to play off roll. Because if you get it so infrequently, sure, it doesn't happen that much, but when you play it, I've just had horrible success. And so it would be great to just like get some foundation for how to actually approach those few games that we do have it, because you've played quite a lot of support, especially in recent times as well. So yeah, that's why I think mid lane as an off role for us support players would be a fantastic place to start.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is gonna be the format of the video. We're going to start with the mid lane fundamentals. Always a great place to start with the fundamentals. Curtis is going to walk us through how exactly we should approach and think about mid lane. And then we're going to be talking about understanding your champion, your champ pool, champ identity, all things relating to your champion. And then matchups and itemization, something that, us support players don't necessarily have to think about to the same extent as these solo laners, as people who are tied to minions, gold, XP.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll wrap it up with reviewing one of my games and then one or two of Coach Curtis's games. And we can see the stark difference there soon.
Great.
Cool. All right. So wave management.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so wave management, a lot of the things I'm assuming would flow on from bot lane. Like, as a support, you're always thinking when you talk about waves. You even said, I think when we about the support
all
video,
the time.
Bot lane is waves, right? In mid, it is. Obviously, I would say it's a smaller lane, so it's not as punishing, I would say, as top or bot. But I would say the number one skill you need to know is learning how to stack waves. Commonly what I'll say with a lot of gold clients is we need to know how to do a classic 2-stack, stack 2 waves into bounce. We need to know how to do a 3-stack in certain matchups. And just understand the importance and the feel of a slow build wave. Slow building and stacking waves is the foundation of resets. You can't get a reset without it, and you can't really roam without it. So it's kind of like everything in mid lane basically revolves around waves. Very, very similar to support, actually.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's the same skill set.
Yeah, and whenever I do play mid, because the lane is so much shorter, because the wave states feel so much less volatile, I just find myself completely clueless what to do as
people just hard shove.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed. People who don't play mid, what they do is they just hard shove over and over again. Because they think that the lane is so small that, I can just keep shoving, and prior equals good. So that's actually one of the biggest things. Over the past few years, if you think about past 6-7 years, the narrative that has been pushed is prior equals good, right? And that's kind of the narrative that people come into when they play mid. But in reality, holding the wave in the middle, or what I call neutral state, it is sometimes best. It's actually more pressuring in a way, because what it does, it gives you flexibility. If you have the wave neutral state a lot of the time, you can then take good trades, you can zone them from the wave, and then if you need to shove and make something happen, it's easy to shove the wave and just move. So neutral state a lot of the time is your bread and butter, and then you can pull waves a lot of the time from there, or you can stack waves. It just depends what you want to do. Yeah,
no, that makes sense, because in bot lane, just because bot lane waves are more volatile, it's very rare that there is going to be a neutral lane, a neutral wave state. And
that's right, actually, yeah.
It's something that I never really talk about when I talk about wave management, and it's something that we'll probably see in my gameplay. But
sure.
Yeah, so stacking waves. So what would you say are some of the things you want to achieve through stacking waves? Why is it so important?
Well, stacking waves, if you think about most... so let's... Similar in bot lane, right? Let's say El Clasico situation in bot lane is you're playing an enchanter versus a melee, like a Leona. Let's say you're playing a Janna into a Leona. Typically, or a stock standard strategy, I'm assuming, would be something like, okay, we get brush control, and then we can stack waves, and then we can actually get a tempo reset. The same thing applies in mid in a lot of matchups where you're stacking waves, but instead of tempo resetting, you can then harass onto tower. Same thing in bot lane. You can sit there and harass on the tower. I would say that's less likely in bot, because I feel like that doesn't happen as much, right? It usually... It does happen sometimes, but it's harder.
It's harder in a 2v2 lane, for sure.
Because support's kind of creating space, Whereas in mid, if you're in an isolated 1v1, let's say you're playing Victor into a Fizz, if you stack 3 waves, you last it and you stack 3 waves into a crash, you can theoretically reset, or you can sit there and actually deny Fizz so much CS under tower just by harassing him. So stacking waves is the foundation of taking good traits, taking good resets, and roaming. So let's take roaming, another one, for example. If you are playing, let's say you're playing, let's take Ahri, for example. If I'm playing Ahri into a melee, what would be more effective for me to get a roam off? Just hard shoving 1 wave and then that melee catching it under tower, or slow building 2 waves, stacking 2 waves together. This gives me, and then that buys me more time, right? Like, now I can hover into river. It's going to take them more time to shove out the wave, etc.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the 3 main reasons.
Yeah, that's actually the same with support. I always advocate to crash stacked waves because it is more safe to crash a stacked wave than a single wave, and it also forces your opponent to be under tower, so you have more freedom with which to move. So no, that's good that we can draw a parallel there. Okay, so stack waves and then freezing waves. So this is something that I shouldn't be surprised seeing it, but it's just never really something that I experience whenever I play mid. And it feels like mid waves can be so easily broken by like supports and junglers moving around. So is this something about like creating pressure and then the enemy team has to deal with it? Or is it something that you find you can kind of control in an isolated 1v1? Or
Okay, this is interesting. So I think of waves or all these wave states, view them as like tools in a toolkit. So let's maybe imagine we have a toolbox, and then each of these particular wave states is a tool within that toolkit that we can use for a particular situation. A lot of the time when I'm freezing, again, the degree in which you can freeze depends on the matchup. So again, let's use some specific examples. Let's say we're playing Azir into Fizz. Very hard matchup for Fizz. Azir probably shoves the wave in, stacks it, bounces the wave back out, lets it come back out onto Azir's side, and then what Azir can actually do, Azir can just freeze the wave. Now, Fizz is a melee. He doesn't have non-committal wave clear. So how is Fizz gonna break the freeze? A level 4 Fizz. Not gonna happen. So then what happens is either the wave stays frozen for a very long time, Azir pokes Fizz off the wave, and then it becomes miserable and Fizz goes down a lot of CS. Or that either you force the jungler to come by and break the freeze, which is more commonly what would happen. Yep. Which is what I call, you're obsessed with small wins. In my opinion, it's not even a small win. It's actually a big win because now you're relieving pressure from the map.
Yeah.
Or the support has to come, so on and so forth. So that freeze may not last forever, but I view it as like a tool to temporarily deny CS, deny XP, whatever it is you want to do. Now, freezes in side lanes are a lot more, I would say, brutal because the wave it's hard for a jungler to commit to one side of the map to break a freeze, where it's very easy for a jungler to come by mid and just kind of like break a freeze. But in saying that though, let's say Azir's chunked that Fizz to 50% HP. And the junglers think, looks mid, pans the camera mid, sees a Fizz with no pot to 50% HP, a full HP Azir. Even if the jungler were to come, sometimes they can't even unbreak the freeze because then the Azir's jungler will come.
Yeah.
They will lose a 2v2. So freezes are a very powerful tool when you're playing lane dominant champions. Like it's a great tool for Victor, Azir, Syndra, etc.
And would you say it's an important tool to punish some of these like tricky assassins that people struggle to deal with sometimes?
Well, the counter to assassins, by the way, the counter to assassins generally is wave management. So when you're versing things like Akali, Fizz, Kiana, Zed, etc., all of these champions are beaten by wave management. Let's give a classic example. People have a mental block for Zed a lot. A common theme you see with players when they struggle into Zed is because they keep shoving into Zed. Now, if you're a Zed getting shoved in, you don't really care about using your W aggressively, do you? Because, you can use your W and you're still near your tower. It doesn't matter. But let's say the enemy pulled the wave and the wave's on their side. Let's say a Victor pulled the wave and now it's on Victor's side. The Zed now has to consider, if I use my W aggressively, now I'm overextended. I don't have my W for escape anymore. So now the Zed has to second guess, whether or not he should use his W aggressively.
Yeah.
And that's really, if he's not using his W aggressively, then he's not poking you. So then you're relieving pressure. So same thing it goes for Akali with W, or Fizz with E, or Kiana with W, whatever it might be. It's the same thing. Waves is the foundation of dealing with assassins.
Yeah, and in a weird way, it's similar to like volatile bot matchups. So if you versus Samira and a Nautilus, some kind of all-in lane, the way that you counter that is to hold the freeze. Maybe for a slightly different reason, like they're short range, they're going to struggle to break the freeze. Maybe it's a similar reason because, you know, melee assassins, they're going to struggle to break the freeze safely. So, no, that's cool. I wanted to get your thoughts on something. I was really curious about your perspective on like early on in the lane versus later on in the lane. Because in support, I kind of advocate that freezing is fine, like pre 8 minutes. It's a timestamp I use.
Interesting.
Because once Herald's on the map, then if you freeze, you're giving up too much map pressure. And then, later on, you just want to play a lot more roaming, pressuring, especially around mid lane. And so I imagine for mid, please correct me if I'm wrong, but like the first clear, or at least like the very early on portion of the lane, like it's just a complete island. And I'm wondering if you see the lane progressing in terms of like being a complete island, you can just freeze, or if you would ever, you know, prioritize tempo and pressure and like stop freezing at a certain stage.
Yeah, look, when it comes to all this stuff, it is a case-by-case basis, but, because like, what I will say is that, you know, you could easily have a Nidalee, because mid lane, you know, when you think of bot, it's like 80 carry support. When you think of mid, it's mid-jungle. So if you've got a Nidalee jungle that's invading at level 2, level 3, then you never really want to freeze, because priority is important, you want to back up your jungler. But let's say, you know, standard junglers, full clearing both sides. Again, it depends on the champ, but very similar to you, it's around 8 to 10 minutes, I would say. 8 to 10 minutes, you don't really want to freeze anymore. Certain champions, though, you'd even stop earlier. So, for example, if you're versing a Fizz or a Katarina, or any of these like champs that will just ditch waves, you don't freeze as soon as they hit 6. As soon as I hit 6, I would very rarely freeze. Into a cat, I would never freeze post 6. Because a Katarina will always randomly ditch waves and move.
They'll just ditch.
They'll just ditch.
So you want to keep them in lane.
Yes, that's right. So what happens, the perfect strategy into Katarina is dominate them pre-6 by holding waves on your side. Then you kind of stack into a really good reset. Then as soon as you hit 6, it's all about slow building into them and then keeping them locked in lane and making sure you know where they are at all times. There is so many times where, like, let's say Incursio from Oath, for example, you'll freeze on Incursio at level 6, and then he'll just run bot. He'll just run bot. Because those champs don't need farm, like Katarina. They don't need farm as much as other champions. So, Katarina's specific. So, but around 8 to 10 minutes usually.
Yeah, okay, cool. So you would want to, like, post 6 versus Scary Assassin, you would want to, like, stack a wave, crush a stacked wave, and then... What are you looking to do? Are you looking to poke them under tower, shove the next wave, or? Yeah.
That's a good question. So it depends on your champion, but let's take a classic mage. We'll take a Victor, right? The way I like to view it is view it as okay. I'll use an analogy for this one. Right. Let's say we'll use like a UFC analogy, right? Let's say let's say one guy is like he specializes in jiu-jitsu. So he wants to keep the guy on the ground. The other guy, he wants to stand up and he wants to like box you, right? Your job, if you're a Victor, you imagine you're the guy that specializes in jiu-jitsu. And once you get him on the ground, you want to keep him on the ground. You don't want to let this guy get up. So what does that look like? Well, by getting him on the ground, I mean have lane control, get the vision down. Basically, you're seeing him, controlling the wave, poking him, etc. You don't want to let him get up by doing things like you roaming to a side and then allowing him to shove and move, or you freezing and then allowing him to move, or so basically I'm constantly stacking waves, harassing, getting good vision, and then constantly keeping the wave, again, like keeping an eye on him, and then just constantly letting the wave come back into neutral, start another slow build. Constant slow build. And then I will then hard shove according to maybe I can hard shove maybe on a wave before a cannon and get a reset if I need to, or maybe I need to hard shove because I need to move to a play, or stuff like that. But generally that's the way it works.
Okay, cool. So I think there was one more. Oh no. Okay. So we got a lot of information about the wave management. Let us jump into warding now. And you mentioned ledge wards. I just want to let you take this one because I've never really used that. I know, like, the only thing I really know is I've heard like the 2-minute 30 timer thrown out by a couple people. But what is a ledge ward and why is it?
Yeah, we'll see this in my VOD later on, but the ledge ward is like the El Clasico ward in mid lane. So basically on blue side, that would mean if I'm on blue side, I would ward their raptors, like kind of like that ledge on their raptors. If I'm on red side, like, sorry, that's sorry, on the top side. And then if I'm on red side, I'd ward kind of my bot side, that ledge on like the raptor.
Yeah, you know, that towards raptors, both sides.
Yeah, towards raptors, exactly. That's the perfect ward because it gives you a really good side to lean onto, and it just map design. If you were to do the same thing but on the other side, right? Let's say not outside raptors, it just doesn't give you much safety because there's two entrances into the river. So for example, on let's say we're blue side, and we would award the bot side over that ledge, kind of that entrance kind of near the banana bush.
Yeah.
That doesn't cover the river, right? Because then they could come through the blue entrance and walk through the river. So I don't feel safe enough to lean on that side.
Okay.
Without,
so it's not necessarily about like the red side camps. It's not like red buff.
Not always.
Okay,
well,
so it's
it is.
like
It is good to know. It is good though because sometimes if you do it well, you can actually see the raptors. And depending on the jungle you're versing, it is good to know if like they've done raptors or not. But typically, it is purely just because it is a better side to lean onto, just from a map design and aspect. Yeah, it's just a really good stock standard ward that you can't really go wrong with.
Sure. And I assume that mid laners they don't really want to use their ward level 1.
No, the only time you ward level 1 is when you're versing a level 2 ganking jungler. Like a Shaco or actually no, there's two situations, sorry. So let's say you're versing a Shaco or something like that, and you know that you're never going to be able to shove out because you're too scared anyway. Okay. Right? So I'm versing a Shaco or a Jarvan or a Twitch, and I'm never going to be able to shove out in the early levels because I'm just under too much threat. I might as well use my ward level 1 because I'm never going to be able to shove out anyway.
Sure.
The same applies if I'm playing Kassadin, the same playing a champ like Kassadin, and I'm never going to be able to shove out because I'm just going to be shoved in under lane the entire lane. At least for the first 4 or 5 minutes. I might as well use my ward level 1 anyway because I'm not going to use it. So they're like the two situations in which you would use it level 1.
Sure. And you just try to get info on like the enemy jungler's clear. Maybe more so towards a camp rather than just...
That's right. On the Raptors. You do it on the Raptors.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And you mentioned pink wards. So I have very specific pink locations just in terms of support. I think you either pink by your lane to play for 2v2 domination or in pixel bush to play towards pressuring mid. And I always, like, in the back of my head, I kind of want my mid laner to buy a pink and put it in the mid bush. And so they have one in the mid bush. I have one like in the pixel, and then it's just complete vision shutout. So I can pressure that lane easily. But I am sure a lot of supports and a lot of just players in solo queue, they're not going to put a pink in pixel bush. So how do you look to place your pinks?
Yeah. Pinks, okay, so there's two main things I would think about when it comes to pink placement. It depends on my ability to use the side lane mid brush. We'll talk about that in a second. But then also how much control I have. So let's say my bot lane is winning and I'm actually doing pretty well as well. Say I'm getting prior in my matchup. Yep. I would be more incentivized if I'm on blue side toward the bot side pixel brush or the dot brush because I know that I have prior, I can defend it. And also more importantly, my bot lane has prior. So then, it's going to be harder for it to get cleared by the enemy bot lane. And we can both use that pink. My bot lane can use it. I can use it. My jungler can use it for an invade. It does a lot of things. The caveat though is if I'm not getting pressure, I can't defend that pink a lot of the time. So I would never pink that if I'm not getting pressure. Now, the other pink location that I want to talk about is that side lane mid brush, right? Just the one on both sides of the lane.
Yep.
That one is extremely good when you're playing champions that can use the ledge to make picks. So a very, very classic play is this, right? So let's say I'm on red side and I'm playing Lux and I'm getting Prio. It's actually better for me to sometimes ward that side lane mid brush on bot side, hover out of vision in between the waves, and then what are they going to do? Are they going to think that I'm roaming? Yeah, are they gonna think that we're doing dragon? Are they gonna think that we're invading the jungle? They don't know what I'm doing. So then Lux can just sit there in that little brush, and as soon as they walk through that corridor, I can just go for a full combo and chunk them.
Yeah.
Same thing for Ahri, same thing for a lot of mages, in fact. Even assassins, you see that with Kiana players, same thing.
Sure.
So that's a very common one. If you're looking to make a play, it's also very good for roam-oriented mid laners that really want to make the enemy confused. Am I roaming or am I making a pick onto you?
So it sounds like I can visualize that mid lane pink bush being really useful.
Yeah.
So just in my eyes, if you're getting prio, and the enemy mid is obviously he's getting shoved in and he wants to try and find a spot to safely ward. I imagine that him just like going for a ward over the ledge is like the best he can do. If he's getting shoved in and he tries to go around and get a ward in the pixel, that could be like really dangerous.
Yeah, he can never do that. Sometimes he can't even ward that mid brush because then again he'll just die because they'll be camping in there already. It's actually a lose-lose situation. That's why when you lose control into those champions that have zone control, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Like if you're visiting a Vel'Koz or a Xerath or a Lux and they've got that control and their jungler is backing up them and your jungler, so in those situations there's actually no counterplay. What you'll find in mid, by the way, and this is like the sad reality mid lane sometimes you are in like simple no counterplay situations where you just have to like lose the least you can in a way. And this is something I've had to learn as a mid laner is like, okay, I'm in a bad spot. This is just the way, like their jungler hovered mid. I got counterpicked in draft. I just have to not die and go down 20 CS instead of dying 3 times. What I will say though, one of my favorite pinks recently over the past 2 months has actually been the pink, placing a pink on like above the red. You know, like kind of like, is it behind the red or above the red? You know, so
like in the enemy's jungle.
No,
or
in your
on
own
your
jungle.
side.
On your own. Okay. So let's say I'm on blue side, just on that bot side, like that bush on the top of the bread or whatever.
Yeah.
So why that wood is actually really good. It does 2 things. It gives you a clear path to roam bot, right? Because where are most people going to ward? They're going to do the ledge ward, and it counters the ledge ward.
Yeah,
because
you put it on the edge as well, right?
Yeah, you put it on the edge, and it counters their ledge ward. So now you've got access. So it does 2 things. It gives you a roam path, but more importantly, it clears the ledge ward for your jungler. So then your jungler has more access into ganking.
I can.
So it's actually a really good ward. And that's actually if you're actually losing prio, that's what you should do. If you're losing prio, that's the most important ward.
Yeah. So before we move on from the pink wards, I'm still not quite seeing the situations where the pixel bush is optimal. Like the ward above red and the ledge ward sounds so oppressive, but then the pixel ward, it gives the enemy mid space to just ward ledge or ward mid bush.
Well, not every champ can use that mid bush, right? Like, and again, like a lot of the time, pixel brush, like it's hard for a mid laner to defend pixel brush. That's the thing. It's like, it's
sure.
Okay, so like at a really simple level, let's say I can defend mid lane. I can defend. Okay, so how do I frame it? So the pixel brush is good when we're playing more for the map and I'm facilitating someone else. So the pixel push is really good when, let's say my jungler is playing an invade-oriented jungler and like Nidalee or Kindred. That pink is really good because it gives my jungler so much more room to do what he wants to do. I think of Pixel Brush as Pixel Brush is good for my jungler, mid lane brush is good for me. Like that's kind of the way I view it. So it depends what you want to do. So if I'm playing Galio, or I'm playing Twisted Fate, or I'm playing Lissandra or something, a lot of the time I like to ward Pixel. It's just better. Again, facilitating my jungler.
Sure. You just give your teammates, especially your jungler, maybe your support, just a little bit more freedom to roam around.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I totally see that. And then you mentioned swapping to blue boards, and my interpretation or complete lack thereof is just I'm level 9. I'm playing these like Veigar or Zillion, like very non-interactive. I just want to swap to blue, 10 times out of 10, and I just don't know anything about like the ins and outs of it. So what are your thoughts on Blue Ward?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that has a very high skill cap, but at the most simple level, the way I want you to think of it is that you're very vulnerable as a mid laner, especially when you go into the side lane in mid game. And a lot of the time, getting one wave of prio can make all the difference. So let's say we're 18 minutes into the game. The AD carry supports a burst swap mid. I'm now playing Victor, and I'm in top lane trying to shove and move and collect a wave and move to my mid lane, right? Because I can't shove outside that deep. Having a blue ward can be the difference between me being able to collect that neutral state wave in top or not. Now, if I can actually shove that one wave out without my jungler hovering, that makes all the difference. Because now my jungler can just stay around mid, I can shove that wave and move. And so it gives you the ability to shove waves that you wouldn't be able to get because you're too scared to face check a bush. I can't walk into that tri-brush and get that ward because I'm scared I'll die. They could already be there.
Yeah.
I'm under mobile mage. Right? So it gives you that. And also the other usage is that when you are playing the side, it just can allow you to shove out even deeper. Like I could get like a really deep blue trinket, spot out if they're collapsing or not, and that allows me to get that extra wave. So a lot of the way I just view it as like it's a way to get extra waves. It's also extremely important as a mid laner in the mid to late game to have because, especially when you're behind, because it allows you to prevent Baron baits and objective baits. That's like the big one as well.
Sure. Yeah, that's the most common experience that I've had. Like from my pro play career, I look if my mid lane or ADC has the blue trinket in the mid to late games to check objectives.
It's very important.
Whenever I end up, so this is very useful because whenever I end up buying blue ward, I use it almost like a 1000 range like normal ward. That's just like it could last.
You can't do that. You can. It's not the end of the world, but like that's not probably getting max value from it.
Yeah, definitely not. So you see it as like one use of it is a tool to allow you to contest a dangerous neutral wave in the
That's right. Yep, and that's that's going to happen a lot when you're playing in a mobile mage.
Yeah. Okay.
Or any mage really.
Yeah, very useful. And then the last point for the warding, I think you briefly mentioned something about timings, and I'm a big advocate of like, specific timings and locations of wards. I know we have quite a different coaching style, but are there any, specific times after like a certain time on the clock, after a certain wave that you think it's good to go for wards?
If you're ever in a position where you're shoving early, you want to be warding between 225 and 230 on the ledge. So what that does is that prevents you getting ganked at level 3. So
and is
most
that
junglers
after the second wave, or
I actually don't count on waves, but I think it's after the second wave. It's as the third wave is coming.
So you shove a wave and then you go ward, or you just like looking at the clock and then you go do it?
It doesn't. Don't get. What I tell clients is don't get caught up in like shoving the wave and then warding. The way I view it is like time it in between the minions so you're not going to lose a minion. So like pay attention to the HP of the minions, and then just sometimes you like, as long as you're in XP range, you might miss one caster. It doesn't matter. Like as long as you're getting the XP. So like what I think is just the timing. I'm always looking at the timer. So I'm looking at the timer. I see like 220. I'm starting in my brain to think, okay, it's getting closer to 225, 230. I really need to get this ward out, and then by 230, I need to have that ward on that ledge. Otherwise, I am vulnerable because junglers will gank you at level 3 at 230.
Sure,
they can gank you.
Yep. And
that's the only time
we will talk about jungle tracking later, but this is like mainly just to stave off that early game from the jungle. Cool. All right, moving on from warding, and now we are into the jungle tracking. So you mentioned where the jungler starts, and just from my interpretation, this would be which side you might want to lean, or if you're warding the same ledge every time. I'm not quite sure how the starting location of the jungler would affect how you lean or how you ward. So how come this is important?
This one's more important based off because in bot lane, you're only getting ganked by one side. Like think about it, there's only one side of the lane.
Yep.
Right? So you already know the jungler's gonna come basically from one angle in a way, whether it's from the river or from the tri-bush, they're kind of coming from one direction. In mid, there's two sides, and that's the complicated thing. And so you've got to really know where they're starting because nowadays as well, there's so many different paths. Let's take Rek'Sai jungle, for example. Let's say we're on blue side, and Rek'Sai obviously on red side, and let's say Rek'Sai starts red. Well, Rek'Sai, he could do 3 camps, so he could do red Gromp Raptors, loop through to mid, and gank you through topside. He could also do red, he could do like just straight red Wolves, Gromp Blue, and gank you through from bot side. He can do so many paths. He could actually do 3, he could do red Gromp Raptors, loop around, don't skip blue completely, and just go through. So there's so many things that he could do. So as a mid laner, you always need to know. Okay, so there's 2 things I look for. Number 1, or 3 things. Can they gank me level 2? Yes or no? Most junglers no. So Jarvan, Twitch, Shaco, probably some of the only few.
Yeah.
Do they do Raptors? Yes or no? Well, if they can do Raptors, then that's actually very important because then they can do that 3 camp path. So junglers that can't do Raptors are very rarely going to do that 3 camp path on red side because they need to be able to do Raptors. So then there's that. And then obviously where they start. Now, you'll also see this in one of probably the best gankers on our server, M4A1, this Kindred player. He is really good at ganking mid. And what he does a lot, he'll do this classic path is on Kindred, he'll do, let's say he's on red side, he'll do blue, Gromp Wolves, loop through mid, and then go continue onto his normal path. The reason that's so good, think about it, it's really efficient. You're not really missing much. You're still pathing to the same side. It's just a little bit of a detour. And most junglers are going to think, oh, they started bot side. All right, they're probably just going to stock standard bot to top. But no, he's coming through mid. So my point being is that like you need to know where they start and also if that champ can do Raptors or not, and if they can do and how good they are at their level 3 ganks. Because that's going to dictate how vulnerable you are. So it's this is what I actually say. And we'll talk about this maybe in the mid lane fundamentals, but simply learning to not die in mid is honestly 90% of the battle. Really.
Okay.
Like,
I can
you are
see that.
extremely vulnerable as a mid lane. Like, everyone wants to kill you.
Yep. As a bad player camping mid, I can definitely attest to that.
Yes, exactly.
So I just wanted to put some life into this jungle tracking that you were saying. So let's say Trundle. Let's say he's a champ that doesn't really want to do Raptors.
Yep.
So if he starts red, then you're not really scared of a gank from topside. Is that kind of what you mean? Because
that's right. Yeah, I'm assuming that unless I'm doing anything, not something crazy, I'm assuming that he's just going to do a standard top to bot. That's correct.
Sure. Okay. And if it is a Rek'Sai, then it's like, shit, he can be top, he can be bot. I need to choose my ward timing. And
well, that's also why, by the way, if you're versing these very volatile early ganking junglers, that changes the way you play the waves. So then I actually will change my strategy. So this is where things get complicated as a mid laner. So let's say I'm playing Victor versus Fizz. Oh, no, let's say actually Victor versus Silas, okay? There's multiple ways you can play Victor versus Silas. I can, level 1, last hit, keep neutral. Now, I might not get to harass as much level 1 and 2, but my level 3 will be better because the wave will be more neutral and it will keep myself safe from junglers. Now, I will do that when I'm versing high threat junglers. If I'm versing a Rek'Sai, that's the best strategy because if I were to shove and harass and have a better levels 1 and 2, by the time level 3 rolls around, I'm dead to Rek'Sai, basically no matter what. No matter how far I lean onto one side. But then if I'm versing a full clear jungler, I'm versing Shyvana, I'll probably go for a more aggressive approach and try and do a 3 stack and then harass under tower.
Yeah,
so
it's more isolated, right?
Yeah, it's more isolated. So the way I play a lane matchup is completely dependent on the 2v2 and the jungler and how much threat they have onto me. That's why Rek'Sai, by the way, Rek'Sai is actually the ultimate mid ganker. It's actually, I think, the hardest to deal with jungler in the game.
Yeah. It's also, Rek'Sai is probably pretty problematic bot just because of the creative paths that they can take. They can E over a wall, and it's really hard to find that ward to just stop all of their paths. I just wanted to tie in the warding and the jungle tracking really quickly. Do you normally ward one side and lean to that side? How does your jungler's location feed into like this leaning aspect? Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, like, I get this question a lot. It depends because, okay, this is a common situation. Let's say I'm playing red side and I know their jungler started red. And then but you're like, oh, I want to ward 230 on the ledge. So you ward 230 on the ledge, but you know they started red. So do I lean onto that bot side where the ward's gonna be?
Yeah.
Or do I lean away?
Towards
Like,
them.
what do I do?
Yeah.
What do I do? Right? So, so what I always say is like, I say ward where you think lean where you think they're not gonna be. But like, it depends on the creativity of the path, because some junglers can do some weird paths. That's the thing. Kindred can do looped, you do back and forth weird shit. So like, then in that case, you just lean to your ward no matter what. But there are junglers where you just know exactly what they're gonna do, and like sometimes your ward is like, it's like an oh shit mechanism. It's like, I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm gonna ward there just in case they do something fancy. But let's say they don't. It's no big deal. I'm just gonna ward. I'm just gonna lean where I know they aren't gonna be. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Don't overcomplicate it.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay, and then this is something that I have talked about recently on my channel in terms of staving the 3-camp gank. So in terms of like the support perspective, you can get 3-camp ganked, and it's a little bit different from blue and from red side. So if we're red side and you reverse a jungler, he starts top, he can clear down in 3-camp. He starts red, he can 3-camp and gank you. But if you're blue side, it's a bit different, because a jungler 3-camping blue side and then ganking with no red buff, it's a lot less frequent. So how do you interpret this like 3-camp gank? And is it like different for either side? Is it like scarier on red side than on blue side? Red camps versus blue camps?
Well, obviously, it's a little bit scarier in mid when they 3-camp. Say I'm blue side and they 3-camp top side because they have red, and red just does more damage.
Exactly.
But for me personally though, I actually went through a phase where I died a lot to the 3-camp blue one. So like, say I'm blue side and they did the 3-camp blue, because it's just not what you would expect. Like, it's not intuitive. Yeah. Like 3-camp red is like, makes sense. Like, it's kind of intuitive, but 3-camp blue, it's like you're doing blue Gromp wolves and coming through mid. Just like the way the path works, like it's like you're going out of your way. I don't know, just not intuitive.
Exactly.
So I would say that like, even though the red gank is theoretically more damage, it's like the blue one is just harder to deal with, because like
it's like a meta game, right? Like, they do it because you don't expect it. It's funny. I recently had a game where Nathan Mott, he ganked me after 2 camps. It was such a weird time. It was horribly inefficient from him. He was Java, he did red chickens gank, and so I imagine that you have to be like kind of keeping your eyes open to a lot of possibilities, especially. You
should see M4, M4's ganks. This guy on our server, he's like a really good challenger Kindred player. His ganks are, so what I've realized with him is that there's 2 things that these players do at the highest level, and this is getting a little bit advanced, but we'll just keep it simple. Sure. These players, they actually understand player tendencies extremely well, but they also consider win conditions, and they adapt to what you're doing in the moment. So for example, I remember this one game distinctly where like, I was like, okay, there's no way this champion, I think he was playing Jarvan, and I know for a fact he started top side, and I'm playing blue, so he started red. I'm like, okay, I'm going to heavy lean on bot side, so there's no way he can go for a level 2 Jarvan gank. So what he does though, is he starts top side, and he wraps around instantly, level 2 though. Level 2 from bot side with red. I'm like, you just came from bot side with red at level 2.
That's wild.
Because he's adapting on the fly. He's looking at my movements, and then they're free flow. So they don't come in with a set path. These players, so like they're adapting to what you're doing. That's why their camera panning is so good.
Yeah, but like for the most part, for most elos, for most junglers, the 3-camp gank is something that you should keep an eye on, right?
Just keep it simple. Look at where they start and how good. Yeah, like you said, for bot lane especially as well. Like, it's very rare that they're going to start blue and gank bot. Like if you're blue side and they start blue, they're not gonna.
Yeah, unless they do like blue Gromp red and they're like really assessing win cons and wave state, it's quite rare.
Oh, you mean if they do vertical?
So no, if we're blue, no, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. If you're blue side and then they start blue, the enemy jungle starts blue buff.
Exactly. Then you're pretty much good to go.
Pretty much safe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then you mentioned, I think, a 5-minute timer.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this timer.
yeah, there was something similar in my games. I talk about I think it's the 4 minutes 30 to 5 minutes timer. So it's once junglers camps are respawning,
That's
and
right.
then what they can do is they can either clear those respawning camps and then gank, or gank and then clear the respawning camps. So then I just kind of give a little bit of a leeway in terms of the timer. Is this like a similar reason to your 5 minutes, the second rotation of camps?
Yeah, what I think of 5 minutes, like, so when, let's say in my mind, let's say I'm versing a Vi. I'm blue side, and Vi started her blue, and she's doing like a clear bot to top.
Yep.
My mind mentally is that I am expecting that she's going to be on that top side till around, she could be theoretically on that top side till around 5 minutes. She could be. And I've seen that. And
that's
so like,
a long time.
It's a long time. And what I've noticed is that like when these junglers get desperate, like, because they think that they end up waiting in bushes because they think that the laners think that they're going to reset and go back to their camps.
Yeah.
But when these junglers are desperate and they're playing gank oriented junglers, I've seen them between 4 minutes 30 to 5 minutes. I've seen them still gank on that top side at like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that they'll clear to top, then they'll look for a gank top. Let's say that gank fails. They'll go do the scuttle. Sometimes they'll even then look into the enemy jungle to see if there's a camp there. They might take one camp, or maybe there's no camp. Then they'll like, then they might go back to their jungle, finish off a camp that they hadn't done, and then they might come back and do one more gank.
Sure.
And then so that is, I've seen that done. So in my mind, at least mentally, at least for me, it's like, okay, they could be in that area. I have seen it until roughly 5 minutes, but usually it's 4:30. But let's say I'd say up to 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So this is like they haven't even based. This is just
based.
like
They haven't based.
Okay, because mine is like they're going to do something topside, eventually reset, and so they're just staying
on that same side. That's right. Yeah. Because I've seen that before so many times, and it's like caught me off guard. I'm like, why are they still here? Because this has actually changed because they changed the camp respawn timers. Yeah. So that's what kind of changed.
Okay, man, mid lane seems like such a war zone. You just have to survive at all costs. I can see why it's so important.
That's why I said like it's 90% of the battle. Playing mid is just learning to not die.
Yeah. No, we're gonna see some of that happening in my games, but okay, let's move on to tempo. So this is another mid lane fundamental. And talk us through this analogy.
So people really get confused with tempo. I like to keep it really simple. I like to think of tempo in terms of like a pit stop at like a car race. Let's just take Formula One, for example. Like a pit stop is like the equivalent of you going in to change your tires, essentially. So the longer you stay in lane, or the longer you stay on the racetrack, your tires get worn out, or you run out of fuel. So at some point, you're going to have to go back. So what we need to do when it comes to tempo a lot of the time is like you want to find a very efficient way to get a reset off. And to imagine if like the enemy messes up, and let's say we're in a car race, and then the person you're versing ends up like messing up and going off the track and like gets stuck in the mud for a little bit. What would actually be the most efficient thing to do? A lot of the time, it's like, I have a free moment where I can get a free pit stop.
Yeah.
And then, boom, refill my resources and then get straight back on the track because, like, they've messed up.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, like, I just view tempo as, like... Tempo is something that becomes very important it's actually extremely important in mid because so many champions could just roam, you want to either be the one that's roaming or at least prevent them from roaming or see where they're roaming. So tempo is probably the most important concept in the entire game if you're a Katarina player or a Fizz player or you're anything that roams essentially. Tempo is more important than wave management.
Okay, and you can even potentially flip that around and say you're Versa Fizz, you're Versa Katarina, because I expect a lot of off-roll mids to be playing more of the mages or the enchanters.
That's right. If you're playing versus any assassin, your job is to maintain tempo, ideally in lane control. And so that's why what ties into wave management, right? So what I want to do is I want to stack that wave, get that good reset before them, and then I'm up in tempo. Because I'm the one that's already reset, replenished my resources, come back with a stronger item. Or they take Ignite, I take TP, I take that reset, I TP back, boom. Now I've got refreshed tires, fuel, and they're still here on their old stuff. I can just then run them over, or I can prevent them from doing anything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's good. And you briefly mentioned TP, and I did want to touch on that because once again, I'm expecting most players off-roll mids to be these like farming. I mean, we'll talk about champ identity soon, but like champs that probably aren't assassins, you know, and they might want to look to take TP. And I know that that's something that just bot lane doesn't have to think about at all. But I know that it is also important having TP versus someone that doesn't have TP, how you kind of want to use that in terms of gaining lane control or tempo. So
yeah, TP is an interesting one. Think of TP as basically a free pit stop or like a free reset, right? And so like use that as you will. Ideally, I'll talk about like you want to find a balance between getting max value from your TP, but then also using it well. And what I mean by that is like, ideally, let's say you're taking C-pot. You want to make sure that you're low as hell and using all your C-pots and then chunking them, then resetting, because that way you're getting max value, right? But then sometimes I've seen people go too far to this extent where they stay too low in lane thinking, oh, you know, I want to get max value from my TP, and then they'll either A, die, or what they will do is they will stay too long, try and set up a freeze for ages, and then the enemy will just reset, come back, and then like the enemy just has lane control. Like, sure, you're milking the value of your TP, but I don't know, like there's a line in the sand that's got to be drawn at some point.
Of course.
But I would actually recommend most people who play mid to take TP because it's just like a safe summon. It's just a safe summoner, and it's really easy to use.
And if we were to just keep it simple in terms of how you want to look to use TP, you can use it like, you know, maybe after you've shoved the wave and you just want to TP immediately back to lane and start controlling, something like that.
Think of TP as a get out of jail free card. It can be used in many ways. Let's say my wave is screwed, and I took a bad trade. TP's my get out of jail free card. Reset, come back, TP, replenish resources. I can brute force the wave out. I got chunked, and the wave's slow building into me. I can quickly take a reset and then TP so I can catch it safely under tower. I didn't manage my mana well in lane, and now I can't get the wave out and break. You know, I can't do anything. Back in TP. It's just like a think of it as like a get out of jail free card, essentially.
All right. That sounds very important for a secondary mid role because we will probably be in jail quite a lot of times.
That's correct.
That's very good. And then sacrificing for tempo. So you see tempo as like, I assume, this type of resource, and sometimes maybe it's beneficial to sacrifice for it.
Yeah. So like, again, a classic example is Fizz. I could panic over trying to get a wave out. Like so a mage slow built a wave into me, stacked it, bounced it back out. Now it's going towards their side. I could theoretically try to, you know, do something fancy to try and get the wave out, or you know, I could say to myself, well, I'm nearly 6. I'm just gonna go down -6, but I'm gonna come up in tempo. I'm gonna have more tempo than them. And now I can make up the difference with that tempo by going for a roam. So a lot of champions that can do stuff with tempo don't care about going down -6. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Katarina's a perfect example. You know, even TF or what the champions that's like it's like tempo's more important than a wave. Or it's more important. It's worth making sacrifices for, in a way. Yes, depending on the champion, of course. So champions use tempo differently. For example, if you get a lot of tempo on a Xerath, if you're playing Xerath, what are you really going to do it? You can't take Raptors. You can't take the enemy jungle Raptor camp. You can't roam very well. You can't even get tower plates very well. What are you going to do with it? Certain other champions are really good at using tempo, like a Diana mid or an Echo mid or whatever, you know?
Sure. And so if you are playing like this champ that struggles to use tempo, you said Xerath, maybe would it be okay to include like Vigar in that maybe?
Vigar, I mean, Vigar is the Predator change. There's not many Vigars take Predator, so it's kind of hard to roam, but Vigar doesn't use tempo amazingly, no.
Sure. And so if you are playing these champs that don't use tempo too well, that would mean that you would be more willing to sacrifice tempo, right?
No, that means so that means you would focus more on like the resources and your CS. Like it's like if I'm playing, you know, because remember on those champions, gold is more important. You know, it's like it's in items. Like it's like, oh, like I really need my lost chapter and I can't afford to get behind in resources. I'm not willing to leave the wave frozen here to get a little bit of tempo. Because what am I going to do with it anyway? You know?
So it's like prioritizing tempo or like golden and XP and items.
Yeah, a lot of the time. Not all the time, but that is a situation that will happen. Yeah.
Okay. And once again, probably most off-roll mid players, they wouldn't be looking to sack 6 minions and, you know, go make an aggressive play and an assassin if they're not playing it. Okay, that's very useful. Cool. All right, let's move on to roaming. So we already mentioned slow build waves and how they can be really useful. And then in tying this with roaming, I assume that you want to slow build, crash a stacked wave, and then, you know, find that bigger time frame with which to move around while they're locked under the tower.
Yep, spot on. Roaming, you can't. It's very difficult. So you're only going to roam on a slow build wave, or a cannon wave, or you could be something like a Fizz or a Katarina that doesn't give a shit, and they're just going to do it anyway.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yep. Okay, no, we don't have to spend too long on the slow build because I talk about that a lot. In terms of support, you just build a stacked wave and then, exactly. Same thing.
Same thing as Bard, Janna, etc.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and so you briefly did mention cannon waves just then, and this is something that I don't really think about too much in terms of support, but is this like a fair statement to make that it is harder to find and generate significant roaming windows mid because the lane's shorter, it's less volatile, and
spot on.
Take every chance you can get?
Yeah, that's right. And also, cannons are very difficult to kill for a lot of mages.
Right. Oh, okay.
Right, like if you're playing, imagine you're playing, you know, Seraphine. You can kill the melees and the range creeps pretty well, but a cannon is kind of awkward because then you're sitting there auto attacking it the entire time because your abilities are on a high cooldown. So a lot of mages really struggle to kill cannons. So like imagine you're playing Fizz as well. You're playing Fizz and then you E the wave. You could probably get a lot of the range creeps and maybe some of the melees, but the cannon's still there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the time cannons are, that's why cannons are really important for resets and for roams. The way I view it as well, by the way, I view cannon waves as like it gives me the opportunity to hover at minimum. So a lot of the time, right, like as a mid laner, this is the one thing that you do with support as well, right? You know, when like you're playing Bard, well, Bard's interesting because you'll probably commit anyway, because a lot of time if you're in a roaming position, you've got so much time that you can probably go to Narnia and back, and you're still going to be in time before the wave comes to a...
And it's also like, you have your ADC who's hitting the wave, so I can like almost ditch before the wave's even been shot properly, you know?
You have so much time. As a mid laner, a lot of the time, your time is very valuable, and because the wave is so short, oftentimes you need to be back there ready to go. So the way I view it is like, oftentimes when it comes to roaming, the most important concept is hovering. What you want to do and get in the habit of doing is get in the habit of just shoving or slow building or on a cannon, shove the wave before a cannon, and just hover in the river. Just hover. Go to about halfway. The halfway point, the way I view it, and this is my formula. You say there's a fight happening bot.
Yeah.
You click on the map. Don't think. Click on the map. Then, after you've clicked on the map and your character's walking down, then pan. Think, and then decide. It's a 3-step process. Run, think and pan, then decide. Now, by the time you get to the halfway point, you can then decide, okay, is something genuinely going to happen and I need to commit here? Or I can just go back mid. Because if you go back mid, you're not really going to miss anything. But if you commit, you've got to make sure you are getting something.
Sure, because you're more tied to the mid waves, right? And you want to...
Exactly.
Okay, I've been developing a pretty bad habit lately. I just run. I don't even pan to the fight. I don't give a shit about anything. I'm just like, there's action, I go. And that's like support. You're not really giving up too much. You're not really...
That's right. Because the lanes are longer and you can stack more waves. You have more time for the wave to come out. Yeah, in mid it's different. And the scary thing is in mid is like, you can lose plates so easily. Like, dude, if you're versing like an Echo mid or a Diana mid, you can literally lose. I've seen this happen. There's actually a Diana one-trick mid in my Midlane Academy who does this in NA. He's taken, like, one guy fails roam topside and dies. He's literally taken 4 plates. Not pretty early in the game as well.
Yeah.
Like, you can literally lose the game as a mid laner by bad roams very quickly.
That's something that, like, sometimes I play Ziggs, and so just to simplify my game, I don't think about roaming. I'm just like, okay, maybe they roam. I'm just going to hit the tower. And, you know, either they did a good roam or they didn't. I don't give a shit. You know,
certain mids are actually really good at doing that. That's actually exactly how you should think. If you're playing Diana, same thing for like Yasuo or Yone. You can take towers really well.
Right. Yeah.
Echo, Ziggs. Don't even bother. Just if they roam, don't even follow. Just legit like just get mid tower.
Yeah.
It's actually sometimes better. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then I just want to briefly touch on this one. So with jungler and with win cons, this is very, very similar to support. I'm always talking about linking up with jungler, pressuring with your jungler. And then, one of my fundamentals is win cons, trying to assess what your team's win con is, and then, you know, leaning to that side rather than the other side.
So it's pretty self-explanatory. If your bot lane is winning and they're your win con, you want to hover bot and roam bot side. If your jungler's your win con or your jungler's hovering bot, you probably want to go hover bot. Same thing.
Very simple on paper. Understanding win cons and comps, it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of experience, a lot of games, but just the core concept there is the same. Fantastic. Okay, so moving on from mid lane fundamentals to all things
the
to do
juicy
with
part.
Your champion. Hell yeah. I'm excited for this one. So this is something that I've just subconsciously been doing whenever I play mid. I either play Zillion and just, you know, farm like 5 CS per minute, you know, group up with whoever the win con is. If I have a kindred jungle, I'm always there. I'm just looking to facilitate, and I'm really not a win condition. That feels like it's pretty straightforward for me. I either do that, or I do something like Vigar, and I'm just farming up, and I know that, you know, my cage is going to be useful. There's going to be some skirmish eventually, and it's going to be useful. Or I'll play like the Karma or Seraphine, and just like I know how to play Karma and Seraphine, right, in terms of the mid to late, front to back. So yeah, is this something that is, it's probably especially important for off-roll, right? You don't want to have too many different identities.
Exactly.
Especially if we're not going to get the role too much.
It's the same thing as support. Like, you know, we were talking about my champ when it comes to support. Like, what I would say is you want, like for me, I like that style of support champ that is like, it's utility-based. I was drawn naturally to Bard and Renata. Like, I just love the idea of like I just like the. I don't want to do damage. I just want to I just want to be annoying. Like I want to be annoying and I want to have utility. Now that doesn't really. It's not really coherent with this point because they don't have the most straightforward identity. But what I will say is that like what you want is you want your champ ideally in mid anyways. You want to know what you're meant to do with that champion. So what you said there with Zillion is spot on. It's like, all right, I know what I'm here to do. Same thing with Vigar. I know what I'm here to do. I might not even be doing it that well, but it's like at least I'm doing something. Like it's better to be weak on a champ with a straightforward identity than weak on a champ with a very confusing identity. So like that's a really great way to go about it. So I always tell people, like, if you don't know what your role is, you can't identify what your role is in a game, then everything crumbles. Everything crumbles because you're going to get overwhelmed. And that's actually why, by the way, there are certain champions like Ahri, for example. On paper, they're simple, but they're not simple from an identity perspective.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
And that's
touch
what I struggle
Ahri.
with. Yeah, Ahri's actually really complicated. And that caught me off guard when I learned Ahri. It took me a long time to learn Ahri because it's like her identity is not clear. It's like, do I play for peel or do I play for dive? Do I play to assassinate? What do I do?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
What am I here to do?
Yeah.
And so I would recommend playing champs that you know exactly what they're there to do.
Yeah. And what do you think about the thought process of, I don't know much at all about wave management and trade patterns, so I'll play like Vigar or Zillion, typically very weak in their early lane, so I don't have to worry about that, and eventually I'll be able to do something.
Well, I would say that is definitely a very viable way of going about it. Like, you can just sit there and play Seraphine. Funnily enough, one of the VODs I sent you was actually versus an off-roll Seraphine.
Okay.
And you can tell she has a crack. Like, she's trying to...
yeah, that's me, just having a crack, man.
Like, she's trying to, like, not lose the game for her team. And, like, she does an alright job. But, like, it's like, you know, that actually is probably a good way to go about it. But, yeah, I think Vigar's actually a really good one because he actually ticks 2 boxes. Ease of execution and straightforward identity. Very simple, ease of execution, use pressure E, you know, very simple, and simple identity. So yeah, that is a good way to go about it. Alternatively though, you've also got champs like, You've also got champs like Anivia. Like Anivia, for example, like Anivia would be a great one because Anivia is, it's like a very, you don't have to dominate lane, but the trading patterns are very simple. I would say that it's probably a champ that you could quite easily pick up if you're a support player, and you just know what you're good at. It's like, I'm good at zone control, I can make picks, I got a bit of utility. Like those sorts of champs are great. It's similar to Veigar. Like Veigar's similar to Anivia.
Yeah.
You know, champs that basically even champions like Galio, champions that basically are, they have utility that don't need to dominate lane. That's what you want. You don't want to ever feel pressured to dominate lane. You want a little bit of scaling, maybe. You want a bit of utility. That's about it. The problem, I think Zilean is good, but Zilean, you definitely want to know how to play him in support because Zilean's a bit tricky, you know, like the double bomb mechanic, and it's a lot of skill shots with the Qs. So, So
I've personally played a lot of Zilean, and I'm comfortable like landing that. Right. But just in terms of like maybe if you're looking to pick up some more champs for your mid lane off-roll pool, maybe stay away from Zilean and Anivia sounds like a great. I can see it's a very clear identity.
Clear identity. You want things with a clear identity, clear trading patterns, ease of execution. Know what I'm here to do in this game. Like I just can press my wall, press my R in a team fight, things like that. You know.
No, that's good. That's good. And then simplicity and enjoyment. And I think this, I'm sure that you probably mentioned some form of this, definitely enjoyment in terms of like just people who play main roles. The simplicity part sticks out to me because I, and probably other, mid lane off rollers desperately need some of that. So I guess this does tie into the straightforward identity as well, but let's just touch on the enjoyment aspect. And what do you mean in terms of like enjoyment?
Yeah, I actually say this even if you're a mid main. What I've found is that we know League is a very difficult game, and you're gonna experience a lot of painful things, and you're gonna lose, you're gonna struggle. If you don't love your champion, you're actually gonna find it very difficult to overcome adversity because you just want to give up. The reason, Cupcake, you're so good at Bard is because you love Bard. You know, you genuinely enjoyed Bard. Like you had fun on the Rift with Bard. Like you were incentivized to push your limits and figure him out because you genuinely had fun with him. And so what I recommend with people when finding a champion is you want to, especially when you're new to mid, find a combination of all three of those. It needs to be simple, it needs to be straightforward identity, and you need to enjoy it. So a lot of people say, well, why don't everyone should play Annie? No, not everyone should play Annie because for some people hate Annie.
I wouldn't enjoy that.
Exactly. Some people, and you're not going to be motivated to sit down and play that game. And problem solve if you don't enjoy your champion. Period. That's just the way League is as a game. And in my experience, that's why also following the meta is the worst advice. It will work in the short term, but in the long term, you'll give up.
No, I don't care about meta when I'm locking in mid. I'm just like, is it simple enough? Do I roughly know how it should play out? And do I?
But you made Bard work as well, even when he wasn't meta.
Oh yeah, and pro play as well. So it's like
exactly.
If we can do it in pro play, then in your gold, your plat games, you're good.
You can always make it work if you love it enough. That's for sure.
Definitely. Okay, and then champ pool size and style. So I just wanted to. I think we have the same philosophy in terms of champ pool size. You want to have a small champ pool. I'm okay with encouraging one tricking, but I do place quite a lot of emphasis on drafts. Now, this may be for two reasons. One is that support, I would say, has one of the most diverse, champ styles. Like you can play a facilitator, you can play a roamer, you can play like a playmaker, and the way that I simplistically see mid is that like typically you want to do damage, and you do have your assassins, you do have your mages and everything, but there's so much value in draft as a support being able to play an enchanter or an engager. Like sometimes your team desperately needs an engager. Sometimes your team can allow you to pick a greedy enchanter, and that's something that maybe you're more comfortable on. Just run me through your idea on like what size champ pool, and do you ever think about like styles of champs? Like maybe do you want to stick to mages, or do you want to have one mage, one facilitator or assassin?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, look, when it comes to secondary role, you know, I am a big fan of keeping a small champ pool, no matter what. Like, I think playing more than 1 or 2 champs in a secondary role is so goddamn hard. So, I think in mid as well, like, if I'm playing at secondary, I would no way play more than 2 at max. Like, you really want to hone in. The difference between mid though and because I agree with support, I do feel like it's game changing when like you have like there's an enchanter game that can just even if you're playing it suboptimally, you're gonna win. Sure. And then like you really need an engager. Like playing an enchanter, you're gonna lose the game. Yeah. Like I know that in mid, I would say it's a little bit different. I don't feel like, at least for the majority of ranks until you're like very high elo, you're better off just sticking to what you know, no matter what. Like, let's say you only play Anivia. The amount of drafts that are going to be a bad Anivia game, barely any. Like, Anivia can fit into 98% of situations, all the way up until Master Plus, easily. So like, there's actually no point having multiple styles if you're going to pick the same thing every time. So what I always say is that I think you're better off as a mid laner to actually have an identity as a player. So if you like mages and you like playing facilitators, you can play a facilitator every goddamn time. There's always, like, as long as the champion isn't too niche, you can't always play a Seraphine mid though. That's the thing. Like, you would want to have but you'd still want to have 2 champs that have a similar identity. So for example, Seraphine and Anivia, they're still mages. They're still immobile mages. So, like, as long as you're not playing Yasuo and then Orianna, or Echo and then, or Fizz and then Victor, like, you want to have, if you want to play mages, all in on that identity and play 2 mages. You know, that's the thing. That's what I'd recommend. So you want the style to actually be similar. You just don't want to have the same type of, you don't want to have, like, too much overlap. If that makes sense. Like, there's no point playing. Like, there's actually no point playing, for example, Orianna and Victor. They're the same champion.
Okay.
Right? You see what I mean? So, like, so that's kind of my take on it.
And there's probably like no drafts where it's like screaming for you to pick an assassin or you're going to scream your team off, right? Yeah.
No, you're fine. And in that one in every, 25 games where like you've got full AP and you can't play your Anivia, then just dodge.
Yeah, for sure. That's good feedback. That's good feedback. Okay, and now champion mastery and champion identity. So this is something that we're both fully aligned with. Champion mastery, incredibly important. I'm sure these are not the only 2 roles that it's going to apply to as well. And especially when you're playing off role, it's hard to, gather champion mastery if you're not playing the role. And so this kind of incentivizes a small champ pool as well, right?
Yep, same thing. Champ mastery, that's the name of the game. And the longer I've coached and played the game, every year I literally say, holy shit, champ mastery is so important. And I actually think the way the game is heading, by the way, at League as a whole, is rewarding champion mastery more and more. Just because like everyone is so good at the game, like you need to distinguish yourself from other people. Like, it's not going to be done by champ pool, it's going to be done by champ mastery a lot of the time. And game threshold, something that I haven't experienced in my brief coaching career so far. So I saw you throw out like a number, like maybe 60 or 70 games. Talk me through the game threshold in terms of like how you approach champ mastery. Yeah, like I for me, like I actually feel like there's 3 breakpoints in terms of champ mastery at a very simple level. So I would say around the 35 game mark, 30 to 40, that's when you're getting a like a pretty solid, like, for most, we're talking mid laners specific. I can't really talk for supports, but for mid lane, the 30-40 game mark is when you've got a really good baseline understanding. 60 game mark is when like you're starting to now, your mental stack is now beginning to get freed up a little bit, and you can start to now think about the game holistically. The 80 game mark is when you are then able to now have your own spin on the champion, and now you're able to now express how you interpret the champion and how you want to play that champion. So for me, I break it down into around 30, 40, 60, and 80. Once you get to the 80 game mark, that's when like you're really actually playing League of Legends and you're expressing yourself through the game.
I see.
And
That's tough because I expect to play like at max 10 more mid lane games on my main and ranked. And so that those numbers, maybe I would have to consider like jumping on a Smurf and just queuing up mid so that when I do get those games, I can actually have some level of mastery.
Yeah, mid, like, because what you'll realize is that, like, any game below, especially below 60, you're actually purely reactive. You won't actually have the mental capacity and the mental stack to actually think outside of you and 1v1. Because you'll be so drained by what's happening in your lane that you can't think holistically. And especially if you're playing a champion like Zillion. Yeah. Well, yeah, especially if you're playing Zillion, like, you actually want to be able to think about the game holistically. Like, where's my jungler? What is he doing?
Yeah.
You know, how do I balance that with CSing in my lane? You won't be able to do that until you've got at least 60 games, in my opinion.
Good point. And then power spikes and troughs. So this is something that I really wanted to talk about because support and, mid lane is going to be very different here. And the way that I see support, the only like two main power spikes I will ever really talk about are level 3 when you have all your abilities. I pretty much say your full build, go roam, go pressure, go do something. Or, tier 2 boots for a similar reason. In terms of like you rush your boots, now you're mobile, now you can generate those win conditions. The only other one I will mention are enchanters getting their mythic spike. That is
mythic
the
is
only
huge, right?
Completed only for enchanters in my opinion. So bards, I don't care. Engagers, I don't care. Go pressure, go get win cons. But the spike for enchanters on the mythic is so noticeable that I'm like, oh, this is actually a thing that I should probably think about. And then I start to like briefly think about mid lane, and then I'm thinking about maybe lost chapters important. Maybe like your second item power spike's important. It's just something that I would never like really think about or like base any decisions off of. So how do you see power spikes and troughs as a mid lane?
Well, yeah, like
very different.
Mid is huge on power spikes. Like, yeah, every champion has different spikes, and when you're playing mid, you need to know when the enemy spikes as well. Like, for example, you're versing Yasuo and Yone spike hard on berserkers. And that's something you got to really think. Oh shit, they got berserker, pre-berserker. Even if they have boots and then 2 daggers, it like feels different to when they have berserkers. Like. You know when they're strong. And so it's your responsibility to know when your champion is strong and weak. And ideally, you kind of have a rough idea when the enemy's strong and weak. Okay, so I like to really think of it as, okay, we kind of have like there's one item spikers in the game. So we're talking the rocket belt users. Echoes and stuff like that, like Echo and Akali. These champs spike, even Ari, these champs spike hard on one mythic. Rocket Belt, sometimes Everfrost users, they spike hard on one item. Then you've got like the 2 item spikers, like a Cassio, like a Victor. What else? I mean, there's so many champions that like even like Swain on 2 items. When like Swain gets 2 items, like there are a lot of these champs that spike hard on 2 items, and then you've got like other champs like past that. It's like let's kind of scale well into mid to late game, But yeah, it's very important to know what your spikes are. Some people spike just hard on Lost Chapter. Some people it's multiple, like just components, like just Noon Quiver. They're good. I know on Aurelia, some Aurelia's major spikes are honestly pickaxe. Once you like, sometimes pickaxe feels like a big difference, and then obviously your Bork. Some Bork users huge spike on like Aurelia and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So. It's very important to know when you're weak and strong. Or then there's actually some champions that spike with levels. Silas is actually a combination of both, but a classic example of levels because your healing comes from your W a lot of the time. And so Silas spikes hard on level 7 when you have a lot of points into your W, and level 9. Some people spike on level 11 when they have two points in their R. It makes a very, very big difference. So it is important to know when you are strong and when you're weak.
And this is going to tie into champ mastery,
That's champ mastery.
Maybe if you pick champs that have simple power spikes and troughs, maybe the Vega or Anivia, you're not going to look to pressure too much in lane potentially. Maybe you want to get like, you want to work towards your lost chapter and your mythic. I'm just assuming that they're...
Yeah, no, Vega is huge on Everfrost.
Yeah.
Vega, in my opinion, changes champion pre-Everfrost and at Everfrost. You're literally a different champion. Because the combos you do are very different. Because then what you do is you can chain CC. You can walk up and then you Everfrost. Or
you land everything.
You land everything. They can't dodge anything. Or you cage and then they
And
can't
then you
escape,
Everfrost.
then you Everfrost, and then it guarantees your W and your Q.
Yeah.
So like certain champs like that, like Ari on Everfrost different, Cassio on Everfrost different. Like Everfrost is actually a huge spike for a lot of champions because it changes the way the kit actually functions.
Yep.
So
No, I see that. I see that.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, reference points. Something that I'm very interested about because you seem like it's an important part of how you see the game and how you coach, and it's just something that I've never really considered.
This is actually everything. Like I said this, I've been saying this a lot recently. If I knew this 2 years ago, I think I would have been able to help the clients that I quote unquote couldn't help at that time. Like there were clients that like I couldn't help, like they were stuck, and I didn't know how to help them. And this is what I wish I knew. So I use an analogy, and I use this analogy all the time, and I'll quickly explain it. So let's say we got Jim Bob, and he's at school. He's a say 10-year-old kid, 12-year-old kid, and he finishes school at say 3:30, and his mom says, "Look, Jim Bob, you got to get home by 4, and if you don't get home by 4, you're not playing computer at all tonight. All right, there's no computer. You're banned." And so it takes half an hour to walk home from school. So Jim Bob is at 3:30, and he's starting to walk home, and his friends say, "Hey, you want to come to the skate park, or you want to go to the mall, or do you want to check out the shop?" And Jim Bob says, "You know what, guys? I can't. I got to get home by 4. Like I just got to get home. Sorry, guys. I can't go today." And he walks home. He says no, and he gets home. Now, in an alternate reality, if his mum never said that he had to be home by 4, and his friend said, "Hey, you want to come to the skate park, or you want to go check out the store, or you want to come to my house, you want to do that," he's probably going to say a lot of the time yes to whatever, to anyone, and to anyone of us. He'll probably say, "Yeah, sure," because I got nothing else to do. I don't really know what else I'm doing today. I'm just chilling. Sure, I'm just going to say yes. So what a reference point is it allows you not only to know what you're saying yes to, but more importantly, what to say no to. Because League is a game where there is so many options, especially in mid lane. In mid, I can do a trillion things. I could roam bot. I could shove and roam bot. I could pull the wave and freeze and play for lane domination. I could stack into a tempo reset. I could stack into invade. I could stack into go top. I could call for dragon. There is so many, especially if I'm playing a champ with priority, there are so many decisions that I can make. So how do I know which one to pick? Well, in order for me to know which one to pick, I gotta have ideally a rough reference point in terms of what does my champion fundamentally want. Now, where this gets even better, let's say I know I'm playing Vigar, and I'm getting very close to my Everfrost, and I'm low on resources, and maybe have like half a combo, and my jungler starts pinging for an invade. If I'm absolutely obsessed about my Everfrost spike, what am I likely going to do?
Yeah, you're probably going to ping him off and just make sure you get your Everfrost spike, right?
That's right. I'm going to ping back. Spot on. I'm going to ping back, and I'm going to start my recall, and I'm going to go back to base and get my Everfrost. Now, in an alternate reality, let's say I wasn't. Let's say I didn't have a reference point, and I actually wasn't hyper obsessed about getting to my Everfrost, and I wasn't hyper aware of like staying high on resources.
Yeah.
I'm going to then walk to that play. I'm going to get to that play, and we're going to lose a 2v2.
Yeah.
I'm going to say yes to a random play that has it's not helping me win this game. It's not coherent with my champion's identity. And so there's the power there. It cuts down the options in terms of what I should be doing, what I should be looking for, where I should be directing my attention. It also allows me to say no to plays that aren't coherent with my champion's identity.
Yeah.
The same thing applies, and this is why I always say, in League, if you don't know how you should be thinking or why you should be thinking a particular way, behavior change won't happen. So when the other day you're helping me with Jana, and you're telling me about like how Jana should be thinking and why how you're thinking about roaming and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If I know how to think as Jana, I then know where to direct my attention on the map. How I should be thinking in the lane, how I should be thinking about my resets, what I should be saying no to. So now I know, okay, I shouldn't be taking these sorts of trades in lane because X, Y, Z. Like, I know why I shouldn't be taking those trades. So reference points are a way of, it's just a way of cutting down the bullshit and simplifying the game. And So every champion has differing reference points. So a classic example with me and my Ari journey, I went from thinking, okay, so it could be anything. So like, there are many ways to play Ari, for example. I can play Ari like a 2-item spiking champion with Leandri's Cosmic Drive. That scales really well into mid to late game. In that situation, if I'm going Leandri's, it means my 1-item spike isn't as good. I'm a lot squishier. I have less burst, and I just need a lot more gold to get to my second item. So I'm gonna maybe roam a little bit less. I'm gonna be a little bit more conservative. I want to really value my farm in waves rather than ditching waves. But let's say I'm playing Everfrost Ari that is hyper obsessed about creating secondary win cons and needing to get someone else ahead. Well, what am I going to do? I'm probably more inclined to give waves. I'm probably going to pan my camera to sides more to actively look for win conditions. Yeah. It's going to completely change the way I fundamentally view the game and the decisions I make.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
That totally makes sense. Yeah. And bringing it back to the Jana point, I'm obviously using reference points constantly, even if I'm not thinking about that term.
You are.
Yeah.
This is the thing, Cupcake. Sorry to cut you off, but like,
no, you're good.
When you're really good at a champion, you have these reference points embedded in your mental stack subconsciously. You know intuitively what you're looking for and what you're not looking for. Reference points is just vocalizing what's important to you.
Yeah.
And why.
Yeah. And it's like, to get really good at League, you need to know like how to say no, right? You need to you need to be like on a path, and like any deviation, you're losing something, and you need to know what you're losing. And so I think about like pressuring the map a lot, and I think about waves a lot. And if my ADC is pinging a bot wave and I know that he doesn't need me there, or I'm missing out on pressuring another area of the map, I'm not going to do it. And just like getting better, getting really good at League, knowing the path that you should take and how to say no to deviation is very important.
But you know why, though? Because you're playing Bard, and you know if you don't get shit happening, you're going to lose the front-to-back team fight.
Yeah.
Right? You know that intuitively. You know intuitively if you don't get something happening...
I need to create a fast pace. Yeah.
Exactly. But that's your reference point. If you ask why... So if I say... You say it to a client, or you say... Okay, here, what I'd be doing, I'd be really like, hovering mid, trying to make something happen mid. Well, in order to the client to understand your reference point, he should ask why 3 more times. So
I don't even. Yeah, I need to get into the details of why.
That's how you teach, though. That's how I teach. Yeah. I teach reference points. So I could say, okay, you shouldn't be hovering. You need to be hovering mid now. Why? Okay, well, because my champion's identity is this, and this is how I need to be thinking. Why? Yeah. Because I know that if I don't do this, then blah 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 blah. You can just keep asking why. Why? Ask if you're explaining something, they need to know the answer. If they were to ask why 3 more times, they should know the answer.
Right. Yeah.
Why? And only when they can answer that, that's when they've got champ mastery, and that's when you can play really good League of Legends.
No, that's great, and that's going to apply to every role, main or off role. Very important point there. I like that. Okay, so League examples. I mean, we've talked about
we've already spoken about them
right now. Matchups. So you differentiated matchups in terms of rank. Give me your thoughts on how matchups shift in terms of Elo.
So I don't really think of... So like, look, in mid, Platinum Plus, if you're Plat 4 and above, you need to be thinking about matchup specifics. Like, how does my champion work in this matchup? So this is where I guess mid differs from support a lot, where if you're Bard, I mean, you kind of it's like more holistic. It's like, okay, I'm playing Bard into an Enchanter or Bard into an Engager. It's kind of like very broad. Whereas like in mid, you need to be more specific, because how you play into a Vlad is very different with how you play into an Echo. It's very different how you play into a Yasuo. It's very different how you play into a Zed. The list goes on. So in Platinum, you need to be starting to actually think about matchups and how because your reference point is going to change kind of in a matchup in a way.
Sure.
So below Plat, don't worry about it. Just focus on your champ identity.
Right.
But the higher you get, the more specific you need to get about matchup specifics.
Yeah, and this is something that we found in our support secondary role. It's like you were asking me about fundamentals, and you were like kind of pushing towards like matchup, and I'm like, it's waves. Like matchup doesn't matter.
Waves. Yeah. So, that makes sense.
Perspective.
Yeah.
And so for our Plat Plus mid lane off role players, you would encourage them to maybe try to learn the individual matchup of the champ that they're going up against, something like that.
In Platinum Plus, yeah. So what I would recommend is I recommend they have a hypothesis, kind of like, so at a very simple level, just visualize your champion at level 3 and how they interact, and then visualize your champions at level 6, and then kind of visualize like how do your champs interact, and what should I be looking to do in this matchup? Can I actually kill this person or not? Do I have to just then farm? Like, keep it simple, but especially since this is your secondary role, if we're talking secondary off role, like
yeah,
I try to keep it very simple, like as much as you possibly can. Just get the basics of how the matchup fundamentally functions at a trading level. That's about it.
Yeah. So not like knowing about like the level 2, level 3, level 4. It's just like, what do they want to do? What do I want to do, broadly speaking?
Yeah, as for secondary role, yeah. And because you're probably... Yeah, but like, yes, if you're a mid bane, you do probably...
Sure.
You definitely need to know, like, okay, in this matchup, I got to like 3-stack a wave. In this matchup, I got to, things like that.
That's going to be hard to learn off role, for sure. Especially
so
if
keep it simple.
Game. Keep it simple, definitely. And then, this is probably tying into that same point.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Itemization. So we have briefly touched on this already.
Yep.
And you mentioned that it ties into champion identity. And you have quite a unique and strong view on how items and champs interact, right?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to make a video on this. It's my next video that will come out soon. Hopefully, I'll probably maybe record it in the next 2 weeks. So if you're interested, I'll kind of talk about it briefly here, and I'll go deeper in that video. But basically, I think of items in a way that they should be completely... Okay, remember what I was talking about before about reference points, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a reference point as an RE that I want to shove and move and facilitate secondary win cons, well, I need to think about, okay, what items would allow me to do this the easiest? What would make the most sense for me? Well, so if I'm worried, if I want to make picks and then to shove and move, maybe I want an earlier spike. That's why Everfrost is maybe quite good, right? If I want to play for shove and move, because it's cheaper, earlier spiking. Or if I wouldn't want to go something like a Leandri's, because that's like a 2-item spike, and I need to get shit done now. So I might go at Ludens or I might go at Everfrost. So I just view itemization at a simple level in terms of what is my role and what will allow me to do my role better. So like if I'm playing a classic example as well, on Everfrost Ari, people have always built like Cosmic Drive second item. And to me, it doesn't make sense, because if I'm playing Everfrost Ari and I'm facilitating other people, I want to get in there, get my CC off, and just create space. So what makes more sense? Zhonya's.
I was going to say Zhonya's, yeah.
Way better. It feels better, and it is better in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it makes more sense with the champion's identity. Everyone's just jumping on that bandwagon of the Cosmic Drive because they just saw some one trick do it. No.
Sure.
Zhonya's makes more sense because it's coherent with the champion's identity and the way you're playing it. So I view it as like, think of your identity and what you want to get done. Itemization should complement that.
Yeah, okay. No, I see that as well in terms of support. I would include runes there personally. So I am a big advocate for like Tank Bard, because if you survive, you're one of the best champs in the game, and just make sure that you survive. And so your items, you're building tank. Your runes, you're indexing into tank. How do runes tie into this whole story?
Exact same thing. If you're playing for a lane bully and you want to dominate your lane, you want to be going Airy and Scorch. If you're planning on scaling into mid game, that you probably want to go, Transcendence or maybe Gathering Storm. Like you want to call whatever you're doing, all in on it. It's better to all in on your identity. The clearer your identity is, and there's coherence between your itemization, your runes, and your style, the easier it'll be.
Right. No, that sounds good. And we just talked about the coherence. And yeah, I mean, we did already talk about the difference from support in terms of item spikes generally.
You have less gold as well, right? Like as a support, you just have less gold. So
yeah, exactly.
you just have less options.
Yeah,
it's like every game ends by the time you get your second item anyway.
Yeah, it's like whenever I make guides and I'm like, build your mythic, build your boots, and then game's kind of over.
It's over. You get like half a Thorn, you get like a Bramble Vest, and like
exactly. Okay, so I think what we're going to do now is have a look at some game reviews, and we're going to start off with me. We're going to set the bar nice and low. Okay, so yeah, we're at Talia, and we're versing a Kassadin, and so I'm loading into the game, and I'm thinking I don't really know many specifics. I know that I kind of want to get prio, and then like try to use that to move to win conditions elsewhere.
Yeah,
and also
so
like
talking about.
So
I was going to say, like Talia. Again, you should be thinking, like, because Talia's an interesting one, because Talia is actually a weak early game champion that spikes, I would say spikes on 6. And spikes, you definitely need, you just need 6 essentially. You get to 6, and everything's going to revolve around your shoving and moving. Notice how as well, like, it's interesting. Why would, like, just, we're talking about coherence and, like, just understanding. Why would Kassadin go fleet? Yeah, think about it, right? It's like okay, Talia's weak early. Talia's really not that much of a lane bully. If we're talking about coherence, what would Kassadin could get away with something way more aggressive. So you know what I mean? Like and like these little details about like understanding your role, and that's why matchups are important. He's maybe just looked online and been sort of fleet footwork.
Sure.
And that makes a big difference because the kill threat Kassadin has on 2 at level 6 is actually going to be very different. It's way less. Whenever I say fleet Kassadin, I'm thinking, hurrah, I'm not going to die anymore. Yeah. And so anyway, my point, like when you look at this straight away, it's like, okay, I'm a Talia. I should be getting to my level 6. What else were you thinking?
So just in terms of the coherence, I try to maybe have a coherent build in terms of like a lot of scaling. The first strike boots, the cosmic, the tier. But all that I was capable of thinking for this game is like, I don't want to just perma-shove waves because that's probably bad. We hadn't talked about mid at all. And so I think I wanted to try to harass Kassadin. So whenever he walks up to CS, I want to get something out of it and then crash stacked waves and then let Jesus take the wheel. I'm not really sure.
All right.
I was always ready to let...
We'll go back.
I was always ready.
Go to the screen where you press tab. I'll explain to you just a few basic things that we keep at a simple level. So we press... this is fine.
Okay.
So a few basic things here.
Oh, no. So, I mean, I was looking to facilitate Zin and Renekton rather than the MF and Ashe.
Great. So that's something that we should talk about. Like you got Renekton versus Aurelia, heavy trading topside matchup.
Yeah.
That's where I'm obsessed with. I'm obsessed with snowballing Renekton topside. That's where I'm going to go as much as I can. But another thing here... Okay, so when you're versing Kassadin, you have 2 options. You can try and shut him down early and actually try to like target him. Well, how would you do that? You would shove and bounce. Why would be bouncing in this game? Well, you've got a Zinzao.
Right.
So what does Kassadin need to do if you shove and bounce? You shove and bounce, pull the wave on your side, ping assistance mid. Like what I would actually say is at the start of this game, I'll say, Zen, I'm going to shove and bounce, come mid. Like I literally tell my Zinzao, I'm just going to shove 2 bounce. And then it's actually, there's no way Kassadin can survive. It's like the perfect.
It makes so much sense, and then,
so simple.
Yeah, and then I get into game, I just feel pressured to like shove it to Kassadin and then roam.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because remember, you don't want to relax. Get to your level 6. So just kill the Kassadin pre-6. Once you get 6, then you're just going to shove and slow build waves and then, not interact.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what should be the case.
Okay, let's jump into lane. And once again, I have no real idea of what to do. Should I hit? I feel like if I start to hit the wave, then he's just going to collect the wave for free. He's not going to lose too many.
It depends what you want to do, right? Like if you want to get the wave back on your side to set up a gank, then you would want to stack 2 waves. So you can harass a little bit, maybe attack it a little bit, but you'd want to get the 2 waves in and then bounce it. That's like basically the fastest bounce you could possibly get.
Yeah.
So you'd really want to... I'd be like auto-attacking a lot here and trying to get this one in under tower. If that was my strategy. If it wasn't my strategy, and so let's say I wanted to just do what was good just for me in the 1v1, and I want like maybe Xin Zhao to play the sides, then I would actually I would play this way slower, and I would last hit, and I would stack 3 waves. And when you stack 3 waves, it's a way bigger wave to harass under tower, and that's like the best way to bully melees essentially.
Yeah. Okay. And so I kind of don't really commit to either one too heavily. We crashed the second wave, and
this would be good if you just left it now.
Yeah, exactly. So we can see what happens. It's definitely not in my... it's definitely not what I'm actively thinking about. It's bouncing Xin, come gank after a red or something like that. But that is something that we would want to look to do here, right?
Because now this is worst case scenario. If you you just don't want to... You don't want the wave to be here. And you end up missing the cannon, which is not worth it at all. You really need to make sure that... I can tell your mental stack is overwhelmed to absolute shit.
I have no idea what's going on.
But notice how the waves, it's just sitting here. This is the worst case scenario.
Pressure, right?
He's not under pressure, and you're not slow building waves. You're not bouncing. We're doing nothing. This is like basically the definition of purgatory. It's like it's going nowhere. Yeah,
and I'm just like, I have a rough idea of what I want to do with the wave, and then I heavy trade, and the wave just kind of gets ruined from.
And look, and notice here as well. It's still not crashed.
Yeah.
So if you go back a little bit, like what I would highly recommend is you got to pay attention to the next wave. So like right now, it's like, okay, it's not bouncing out to me. So what do I got to do? I got to hard shot this one before that next wave comes, right?
Yeah. And we can also tell that I'm just kind of in the middle of the lane the whole time. I don't know when and where to use my ward at all.
You're warding, leaning. Because again, all this is predicated already right now. You don't have the champ mastery. I can already tell. I can tell a player if they have champ mastery in 30 seconds. Literally 30 seconds, I can tell.
Yeah.
Your mental stack is overwhelmed. I guarantee you didn't track first clear. You didn't warding, no leaning.
No, it's interesting because I've played a lot of Tilia sub. Yeah. And I'm quite confident. And I think we played a Tilia... I versed you when I was a Tilia support. And so I'm very confident in trading and playing around bot wave and then like roaming and doing stuff. But then put it in the mid lane and you have to deal with like the shorter lane and you have to CS and all of this. It's just completely gets overwhelmed.
Yes, it's a lot. It's a lot. That's why champ mastery, man. And you got to get those 80 games in.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, the waves in Narnia. It's just sitting here doing nothing. Well, you are incidentally here actually hovering the right side. It looks like you did register that.
Yeah, so this was a bit of a deliberate hover at least.
Yeah,
this is when I'm
and that just shows. This just shows that, I don't know why the hell they would fight that. Oh no, because Pike's moving up. Okay.
Yeah, so just in terms of target selection, I decided that Kassadin should probably be the one to go for, and this isn't like, you don't necessarily have to be, like, you can make that call if you're a support man as well, you know? In terms of just like assessing skirmishes.
Yep. Usually it's like the lower target, honestly. Yeah, which was that was the case there.
Yep.
Xin Zhao plays that pretty well, but you're kind of all right.
Yeah.
So look, not too bad. I mean, you got 1 kill.
Yeah.
So right now, honestly, like, you know, you haven't really the wave actually is coming back out too. So all I'm thinking right now, like, what am I trying to do? Am I still trying to kill this Kassadin pre-6? Or am I just playing to get to my level 6 and let Xin Zhao do his thing? Remember, that's reference points in a way. What am I trying to do here? And so that's rather than looking at what you're doing, it's more how you're thinking. Like, what are you trying to do here?
Yeah. And so
you can
I think
hold easily if you wanted to.
So if I were to try and hold the freeze, what would you recommend I do differently? Just like damage the wave more to match his damage on the wave, right?
Yeah, thin the wave. And then you only want there to be around 4 creeps, so just kill maybe that one last caster, that low one, and then pull it down. What I would actually do is pink that, and then pull it. What I would do is actually pull it into the bush to de-aggro, so you don't take as much damage as well.
Right.
Like you can kind of do that.
Yeah. So what was going through my mind? My jungler's here. Kassadin has no flash. We have a freeze.
Yep.
I'm not going to be shoving this. So.
But this could have been done at level 3.
Yeah, I mean, a broken clock is right twice during the day, right? So.
But this is perfect now. Now you got the way. But by the way, what you should have been doing, you should have been spamming your assistants mid. Like this is a no counterplay situation. But it looks like he got swept or like a Scry's bloom, which is a bit sad.
And then I don't know how mid laners deal with shit like this, but
yeah. Well,
I'm just dead.
Well, that's also, by the way, when I look at this, again, tying into reference points, if you go into loading screen and you see barred pike, automatically you have to play mid. It's like it's a 2v1. That's just it. That's the reality. So here, that's on you. You're not thinking about pike. Again, your mental stack is overwhelmed.
Definitely not.
But now at this stage, right, there's no way you can punish Cassidy anymore. He's gonna get he's guaranteed to get 6. So now
Push
what I'm
into
thinking,
him,
get 6 and pan my camera to top to identify when can I go top, essentially.
Yeah.
That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah. Okay, so we might just speed this section up just a little bit. Crashing this wave, and then I do want to move. I'm not panning top. Oh, okay. I'm ready to move top.
Okay, we'll do a little bit of panning. That's good. Okay.
And so I'm waiting potentially if he shows on this.
And this is good because you're not going to win by, like, you're not going to carry this game. Like, you should actually, that should be a stack into dive there. It's actually worth going down -6 to make that happen.
Yeah, you can see I type dives there. So,
but
I think hopefully
you know what I was going to say? Like, let's say hypothetically there, if you go back, we're talking about making sacrifices, right? Let's say hypothetically that wave was coming in faster, and then, but you were going to miss 6 creeps mid. It's worth it to go down -6 here to make this happen because Renekton's your win con.
Yeah.
So that's why it's always thinking win con, win con, win con.
So just like stay here, get my top lane and just crash the next wave, just die. That's the win con. Yeah. We failed to snowball mid.
That's right, because you can't. You're not the win con. You're already behind. Like you've messed up, right? You're not the win con.
So I should have just stayed there. We can have a look at what I am going to do instead. I guess I'm going to maybe like try to crash this wave and then ult on top to dive on that wave. You can see I'm still.
Yeah, it looks like Renekton's going for a massive stack, but Xin Zhao going bot is like end.
But Zin's going bot, and so this is shit happens, right? You can't really. I
think you make that work. I think you can make that work anyway. But
even without Xin.
Yeah, you don't need Xin. It's a one shot.
Right.
So if I go back here, if you go back, I mean, you got DMAT, so you can. But that's a perfect example here. You don't need to shove this next wave. Because
this wave didn't really matter.
No, the one after. I'm talking about
this one coming in.
Yeah, you don't even need to because what you want to do is you want to time your roam with that dive. You're not going to have time to shove this next wave, in my opinion, and then be top. I think you actually want to give this wave mid and let's leave it. And it's a counter wave, so it's good. It's fine. You have time. You know, it's not that bad.
So so that was actually what I wanted to do. You can see I'm just running top, right? And I don't care about this wave. I just want to dive top. But I didn't. I assessed that Xin being bot side instead of top, makes it a bit harder. But I mean,
one shot anyway.
Renekton and Talia just going to absolutely annihilate.
Yeah, and that's champ mastery again. That's champ mastery.
Yeah. Okay, so he missed that window, and then I'm going to come back mid and just shove this wave out. And then there's a bit of a skirmish.
If you don't dive top here, the game's just done.
Yeah. And this is going back to reference points, right? And just like win con assessment. We had to deny that stack top wave.
Yeah, because you guys are going to get outscaled because I think your bot's losing. Xin Zhao's fucked now. And now if top doesn't win, it's game over.
Yeah. And so obviously I have absolutely no idea how this 1v1 plays out. Even if Pike's not here, it didn't look too hard.
Yeah. No.
So this is just full autopilot. I see champ, I hit champ. The play that I had in mind was just to die that stack top wave, and now it's gone.
Yeah, that is literally, if this were my coaching session, it's end of review at that bot play. You've messed up.
Yeah. So I think what we can do now is maybe have a brief look at a little bit more of the game, because I'm sure any VOD I send to you, it's going to be end of review at like 2 minutes, but if we can just have a little bit more.
Well, because this is the thing, right, is that the reference points become quite hazy. When you miss your windows, and by the way, so let's actually go back here a little bit. Can you go back just a little bit here? So even before this, I want to go back to when you base. Yeah, so here, right? So talk about tempo, right? So you get chunked out. So you gotta now think, okay, is Cassidy gonna base or not? Because if Cassidy's not basing, you don't really have tempo because he's just staying on the map. But if Cassidy is basing, you are theoretically gonna have tempo. So if we play it from here, it's your responsibility to track your counterpart. So it's like if you're playing an enchanter and you're versing a pike, you got to track.
I'm pinging his roams.
Right. It's the same thing here. So right now you got to have a hypothesis. Is this guy going to stay on the map? Like you got to be aware of his resets. Like is he going to stay on the map or what? Now if we fast forward a bit from here, it looks like Cassidy or Xin Zhao makes a play.
We see him kind of move towards top river, right? And I just don't communicate
Little
it
bit,
whatsoever.
but you don't communicate it at all, and now you're late to the play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this is probably a little bit to do with mental stack and just like knowing that, you know, I mean, I know how to track my counterpart in support, and then in mid, I just too many things. I don't do anything.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll just have a look at maybe one more example.
But this is coherent with your champs. This is coherent with the win con, right? In the sense that your Renekton is your win con. So this is not a bad play. I'm not a big fan of that. Like, I think it'd be better to hold your abilities to chain CC with Renekton. Like, you shouldn't even be using, like, that's like a flip. Like, that was a massive flip. Like, you should, if you actually hold your abilities here, no one can go in, and then because you one shot whoever goes in.
Yeah.
So, again, champ mastery.
Yeah, and now it's just like kind of full disengage is a big fight. I mean, the win condition has been kind of destroyed once again.
Yep, the win condition compromised.
Yeah,
and again.
I think at this stage of the game, I die and then I end up this game like 0, 12, and 1 or something.
Yeah.
So
think about what you've done. Like, you've missed your windows to shut down Cassidy. You've missed your windows to snowball your win condition. And then like the bot's just losing naturally. You have one winning side, one losing side. You didn't complement your winning side, so you deserve to lose.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get outscaled, and you had your windows, but you missed your windows.
Yeah. And I could have used wave management to set up, especially when we forced Cassidy's flash in that 2v2 skirmish. That was a huge opportunity for me to just hold the wave, spam ping, kill Cassidy in pre-6. Once that window, evaporated, I had to really focus on that win con. Of Renekton versus Irelia, because that's what my champ kind of needs to do.
That's right. Notice how we're always bringing it back to reference points and win cons. Yeah.
Okay, now that's very useful. And now for a stark contrast, we're going to have a quick look at Coach Curtis's game. So this is your Ari versus Vigo game.
Yeah, let's quickly look at this one. So this was a game I played recently. If you actually go back and pause on the when I press tab, So when I look at this. I'm thinking top matchup, very volatile. Like straight away, I'm thinking, Riven versus Jax, volatile and I know this matchup mid, it's actually very hard to punish a Veigar. Traditionally, Veigar is actually a counter to Ari. And it's hard for me to kill the Veigar. So, and I know that it's actually going to be really hard for me to kill the Veigar because I've got an Evelyn and they have a Kindred. So their Kindred is going to be way earlier pressure. I've got no support from my jungler. So you actually see as we go through this VOD, now you can just skim through the early lane. I'm actually not playing to like pull waves or anything like that. I'm actually playing to kind of basically use offense as my defense. I'm not really playing to kill. I'm just playing to get to my 6. My entire mindset here is shove, make him react to waves, and because if I were to pull for pressure, my jungle's just going to get invaded by Kindred. And Eve screwed. So I have to play for Prio, right? Because your Kindred is an invade-oriented jungler. So all I'm doing right now is I'm playing for Prio, making Veigar react, looking for what I call high-value Qs every now and then. I get an award earlier this game because Kindred can do some funky, invades, and I just wanted to get that ward out early. And you'll see here, I'm just, again, going for high-value Qs, and I'm not really playing to kill. And just with the wave states, I won't kill Veigar like this.
And so is this like mainly from the jungle matchup? It sounds like if you had the Kindred, they had an Eve. Okay.
Well, okay. I would actually do the same thing if I had a Kindred and they had an Eve. I would actually do the same thing because complement my Kindred. Yeah. But for a different reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
So this is this is just my interpretation of the win con. It's my interpretation of my role in this game. Some other RE players might play more selfish.
So having first move. Yeah. Okay.
That's right. Some people might not even. They might screw Evelyn. I'm going to do what's good for me in the 1v1 and hold the way.
And just carry 1v9, hopefully.
Yeah, try and do that, but I don't think I can do that into that comp. And I know that I've played the greedy style into Veigar before. I've tried that and it didn't work. Mm-hmm. So you can fast forward this. It's pretty non-interactive. Yeah. I know Kindred part topside. And Evelyn gets invaded. I take. Oh, by the way, that's an example of that trades that you can do if you go back. I walk into the mid brush. But that's the example. If you have that pinked, you can do these sorts of things like that.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so your reference point for this game is like you're not going to be the win con. You want to buy space and time for your Eve to farm up and be a menace and later on. And then maybe
I
keep
view
your
myself
eye
as
on...
I'm a secondary win con.
Okay.
So I'm there to basically complement my other potential win cons.
And that's
so this guy comes through. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, so that's mostly going to be like buying space and time for your Evelyn early and then keeping your eye on the volatile top matchup as the game
Yep,
goes
that's right. That's exactly how I'm thinking. And try and get to 6. So I'm now trying to, if we fast forward this one, I think I'm now just trying to clear the remainder of this wave and trying to get a bit of a reset here. I think because I got chunked here by the Kindred and I don't have TP, it's a little bit tricky for me. So this is actually a moment here where I see how I just accept reality. See that?
Yeah.
I just say, well, it's actually bad for me to stay in lane if I'm low here because Kindreds can kill me. I don't have 6. I could have actually theoretically reset before. That's what I probably should have done.
Yeah,
what I should have done is actually reset.
Before the cannon, right?
Yeah, I should have just cleared these 4 here and just reset instantaneously. Yeah. But then I'm like, okay, I messed up. I don't have enough resources. Right. So I'm just going to accept reality. And I'm just suffering the consequences. A lot of people would just try and stick around and try and fix the wave and do that. No, screw it. It's not a big deal. I'm just going to quickly do my thing. But then actually, this guy ends up staying for the next wave to greed, and everyone kind of ping for it. So we end up going for like a really good play here.
And then you want to crash this wave, get your reset off.
Yep, get my reset off. And now this is amazing for me.
Yeah, so just out of curiosity, was this going to be an Everfrost 1-item spike game to facilitate top jungle, or was this going to be, the Leandry's 2-item spike, more selfish approach?
A lot of the time what I actually do is I actually build Lost Chapter and then I gauge the way the game is going. So like it's like if I get stuff going and it's a fast-paced game, I might go like Everfrost. But if I feel like it's a bit slower, sometimes I will go Leandry's. But I think this game, I went Luden's. I think I just went like for raw burst because our comp can just play for burst and one shot. Okay. I think that's what I did, but I can't actually remember. But now notice how like I think Riven's got 2 kills. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, and this is a perfect example. Notice how I don't freeze. I could have froze that, but notice how I don't. I don't freeze because I just want to now shove and I want to complement my team. So look at this. You'll start to see I just keep panning my camera top. I see the top waves coming in. Look at this. I'm like hovering, and I'm like, all right, it must be watered or something like that because they need respect. So I just go back mid. That's fine because I shoved that wave out, so I don't really miss much here at all, actually. So that was a really good hover. I pinged that. See that? Vigar. Yeah, see my mental stacks. I can think about this. So I can think about Vigar, where Vigar's moving way in advance. I pinged that Vigar was moving there while doing other things. My mental stack's free. But look what I do. You'll see here. Boom. Shove. Complement my jungler. Straight away. Clear vision. But notice I'm panning my camera top as I'm doing this because I'm running, okay, is top heavy trading? Because that's the lane I ideally want to go to. But I had to hover bot because that's where my jungler was and I couldn't leave my jungler alone. Right? Okay. So then I'm shoving. Notice how I'm not playing for Vigar. I'm not even trading with Vigar because I don't want to bother. I can't kill Vigar. Yep. And then here I see the red coming up and I know Kindred's going to go to the red. So then I like start hovering topside here. Okay. Yeah. And now because I know he's going to go back to his red here. See that? But then this was pinked. I'm like, oh shit.
Right, yeah.
So some of them doing
it's a good pattern. You know where you want to look.
So I'm always thinking about what's next, right? My mental stack is always, I'm able to think about what's next. And then boom, right place, right time. So notice that. That's all just right place, right time. I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm just in the right place, right time. Yeah. And then boom, shove, because wave's in a bad spot. Now, here it ruins my tempo a little bit, but I don't care because I don't have ultimate anyway, so I can't really do much with my tempo regardless. So it doesn't really do much.
So how come you don't want to hang around and facilitate like heavy trading top and extended jungler on this?
Because what can I do? I don't have R. Okay. I'm always bringing it back to my reference points. I want to get to my mythic, and I don't have R. R is an incredibly R-reliant champion. I need to play off my R. So it's about saying no. I know what I'm going to say no to.
And is this 1900 a mythic?
Yes, I believe so. Okay. I think I end up buying Mythic, or unless I just go for tier 2 boots, because sometimes delaying tier 2 boots is bad on Iris. See what I do? Oh no, I go straight to Ludens. Okay.
So it is a Mythic. You had your reference points. You don't have you don't have your Mythic.
I'm always thinking about my R. R is what I think about most of my attention on. Do I have my R? If I don't have R, I'm probably going to say no.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll just have a look at maybe just a little bit more. So notice some top fighting.
Yep, I'm always painting my camera top, hovering top. So notice that? Same thing. Now here, this was an interesting one, because top there was nothing happening, and like it was just like an opportunity moment. I don't want to ever hit tower as Ari. That's not my identity, so I'm just going to hover bot anyway. So I'm just kind of fishing. If nothing happens, nothing happens. Not a big deal.
Yep.
This is fine.
And it's clear to see that you really haven't looked to, kill the Vega 1v1, or your win con assessment is elsewhere.
Yep, that's it. And then you'll probably should go. I should have went top here. I don't know why I'm going bot here. This is actually not good. I should be going top. Because think about this. I mean, my Evelyn's top side, my Riven's win con. I should have been top there. That's actually bad for me. I should have been top. So that's me getting distracted. Maybe I lost my focus, whatever that might be. But that's not good.
But Ari is more than capable of playing to punish mid, right? In a different kind of situation.
Yeah, but if I were to do that, I would have to hold waves on my side and
of course,
things like that. I would have to optimize, change the way I'm playing my waves.
Yeah, for sure.
So try to make something happen here. Counter gank the Kindred. That was only, I think, because Kindred was on the dragon, so I decided to go for that play. Typically, I think what I will, because he just got the dragon. I think I end up just trying to cover. I think typically I wouldn't make this play, because typically what I would do is I'd be more obsessed about just protecting my Eve. Right. But I must have had a read on Kindred. I don't know.
Yeah, because you had that volatile top matchup, and then you want to lean towards your jungler. This is just like you were on the wrong map at the wrong time, so you may as well look for something, right? If you
yeah. But typically, and then a base on a cannon here. See that? Base on a cannon. Oh no, I should have been. Oh no, I think because Evelyn was hovering mid. I think that's why I cancel. But I think I should have committed to that. That's bad for me. Because I had tier 2. See, notice how I already had tier 2 boot gold?
Yeah.
I should 100% reset here. This is not good for me not to reset, because I don't want to play. I don't have my R, and I have my tier 2 boot gold. Very important.
Okay, so no, this is really useful. So a huge point of improvement for me is to try and put a little bit more emphasis on these reference points.
Yep.
And it's going to be easier said than done if I don't play the role much and I'm just overwhelmed. But
what's easier with Zillion? That's why it's good you play Zillion, man, because Zillion is that champ that you can really know where to direct your attention. You're playing around your jungler. You don't really have to interact too much in mid lane. You're kind of just playing for the wave, playing off your lost chapter, tier 2 boot spike, that sort of thing. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I think we can wrap this up. I mean, I've learned a lot, and it's very obvious that these are very different roles, and the game is amazingly complex, even within one role. So it's always eye-opening having chats with you, and I'm actually excited. I'm probably going to queue up mid primary on my Smurf and just get a feel, try to develop some.
Have a bit of fun. Yeah. Develop that mental stack. Remember, that's why I said the more freed up your mental stack can get, because you've got the muscle memory down, you know how to manage waves while jungle tracking. You get all that out of the way. Then you're finally able to play League.
Yeah.
Right? That's playing League right there. Because notice I'm not bombarded by my 1v1. I'm not bombarded by having to think about how to CS and shit. I'm thinking about the map and how do I kill the goddamn Nexus. Right? That's where my attention's focused. How do I kill the Nexus?
Exactly. And I mean, we're going to have plenty of time to do that, even in loading screen. I've played the game long enough. I know what champs want to do, even if I don't know mid lane very well.
That's right.
I can assess win cons and then use that.
You've actually got it the other way around, you personally, because you've got you actually would know how win cons work because you've got that from support, but you don't have the muscle memory, the micro, the basics of the champion. So You for you, it would actually click easy. Once you get that, if you were to get 50, 60 games in on one mid champ, the other part of the journey where it's about win cons would actually be easier for you. Yeah. Because you already know it. You know that you can just plug and play.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and thank you once again, Curtis. This is very generous of you to come and give me your time today. And be sure, guys, to check him out. Coach Curtis on YouTube. He makes fantastic educational content, and he has a lot of mid lane content. So if you are going to be playing mid off role, definitely go and check his videos out. I believe you do have some fundamentals. You have a playlist of fundamentals on your channel as well, right? Yep. Awesome. Thanks everyone for watching, and my pleasure. And I'll see you guys around. Let me know if you enjoy this type of new content, and goodbye.